Hello and welcome to Making a Tactile Frame with me, Nicky Dillerstone. Episode 1, Getting Started. Well, first of all, I'd like to show you some of my own work to explain the way that I work really. And this is all about creating interesting textures on surfaces. I use mount board as the base surface, and then I use various adhesives, predominantly PVA glue and a slightly thicker fabric glue, and I just collect a range of materials that I can select for various purposes to use in my work. On this page here I've used muslin, I've used some wool for felting, and just painted on top of it, and I've added other threads to it. On this page I've used some lovely silk threads and painted over part of them, and actually this page I rather like. I've dribbled hot glue along there to get some quite blobby techniques effects, and then added muslin and some paint and some fibres. I like to get, and I think this is key to making tactile surfaces, get a story behind it, and that's massively important. The story behind this is a winter moon, so obviously it's all about the sky. So we've got like the lovely dark blues, dark cold blues of winter. And then I've added silvers and whites, a little bit of gold. And then just tried to go with maybe a moon face. But then elements of just silver items. And then trails, because often you can get very, very thin cloud. And just trying to create something that's quite atmospheric. And you'll notice that not every page is the same, and not every area of the page is the same. So that's really important to note. So that's my winter sky. Next, I have my lovely egg book. I call it my egg book because to me it's about an empty nest, and these are little eggshells left in the nest. So because it's about birds and about, you know, flying away, so there's I've used some feathers and just glued over that and painted over part of it. You've got the circular aperture of the nest and the little bits of eggshell left in there, and I just love metallics, so to work in like the turquoises and metallic greens, it's just lovely for me. And again, notice that there's a varying amount of detail on each page, and it may be one corner that is the focus of the actual tactile work. So those are two small books, and then I have a larger piece of work here under all my materials, untidy as usual. And this is my autumn woodland. So I do love the autumn. I think the colours are quite spectacular. So we've got lovely woodland colours of dull browns, quite dark greens, tans, and then shredded sort of, you know, you've got like leaves going to skeletal shapes. You've got twigs. So I've really tried to use quite open materials to reflect that skeletal element. And in some pages I've put threads down. And then tissued over them. And then in some I've left the materials very much on show. But a favourite page that I think we'll use as inspiration today is this particular page, where there's a focus of tactile materials round one side of the aperture, really quite encrusted, and then they trail off around the other side. So you've got one area of focus. It makes it much easier for people to read your work if it's not got all the same amount of detail, so that their eye can be led in on the smoother parts and then really get involved with all the encrusted materials. So we will start with the basic frame, and here is a basic frame. It's an A4 piece of mount board. Very important to use mount board because it's really tough. And I've already put a coat of paint on one side, but you can see how it's bowed slightly already. So any finer card will bow terribly and it will spoil your work. So mount board, you can buy this, and you might be able to buy offcuts actually. If you know of a picture framer, often they've got offcuts, which is brilliant. Or I have a much smaller frame here, and this I bought in a frame from a charity shop. The frame was about 50p, but inside there was a card mount, and I think there was a little embroidered picture in there. So you could use something like that. Now, you know, this got quite a good sized aperture and then not a great deal of card. So that limits the amount of materials that you could put on here. But obviously with a bigger frame like that, then you've got lots and lots of space to put various materials on. So looking at this now, it's like, right, okay, so what materials do you use? And it's very, very broad. Tissue paper, craft paper, even kitchen paper. You can, fabrics, you can use muslin. I love muslin. It does so much for you. It distorts, it shreds. And it's always a bit of, you know, like, ooh, tension relief as well. But beautiful craft paper. Craft paper, you will find some of it tears beautifully. So if I'm thinking of natural shapes, tear that into more of a leaf shape. And then you get lovely wispy ends that really bed down nicely in the glue. Lace, all sorts of different lace. This is machine made lace. And I've got some machine embroidered. You can cut out chunks of that, paint over those. This is a hand crocheted mat, but I've started to cut it up. I've actually started to cut out the individual flowers there because I thought they'd be quite nice to use because they do sort of raise up quite nicely. But you could use a whole chunk of this. You know, you could really just get something quite, you know, so you're really starting to conceal your aperture. So you could do that, but you can have a thinner lace. Felt, you can use felt. Don't worry about the colour. We're going to paint over things. So if you've got any felt, you don't need a lot. So, you know, bring that along. Fruit netting. Gotta love fruit netting. That's nice because you can scrunch it quite nicely. But you can also stretch it out quite well. So that's good fun. As I said, tissue, lovely fine tissue. But brown paper, good old brown paper. Screws up nicely to give you something to work with. But can stay screwed up, so you could even start to like build a texture from that. Almost could be like a walnut shell, that I suppose. Threads, oh, so many different threads. This is a lovely parcel string. Got a nice body to it, so when you start to glue that down, it will still stay quite raised up, and you can start to untwine it and then start to splay those bits out as well. Tapestry wools, lovely and soft, absorb glue brilliantly. Crochet threads, got any spare bits? Again, charity shops are great for bits like this. You'll often find little craft packs, but you pay £1 or £2 for. But you know, it gives you a whole sort of inspirational little pot to work with. Yep, so lots and lots of different threads. I've already got a base colour on here, so obviously the card started off like that. Always good to get a base colour on to start off with. The reason being that once you start gluing things on top, you don't want the actual base white card showing. And once your PVA glue has set, you might have an area that you can't actually, that the paint won't permeate, so you'll be left with maybe a bit of white card showing through. So a base coat of whatever colour you're going to choose to start off with. And it can be something, I mean, this is a stencil paint, but it's acrylic. So, you know, it's nothing clever at all. Basic acrylic paint, soaks straight in. Tester pots of emulsion are fantastic as well. Anything. I don't like things to cost, because then you get a bit scared of playing. So do play. Playing is incredibly important. Incredibly important. To fix everything in place, we've got your bog standard PVA glue. Nice and gloopy. And you can use a paintbrush or a spreader for that. For more tricky bits. Any fabrics that resist, any fabrics, threads, bits of card that resist with PVA glue, then get a thicker textile glue. And that will hold most things. And you can get those from like the Range. Any big craft store really should sell stuff like that. You need a range of paintbrushes, maybe one for your glue and one for your paint at least. Maybe 2 or 3 for your paint would be useful. You need some pots to hold water and glue and paint in. And then that's, you know, once you've got your range of papers, your range of fabrics, your range of threads and your glues, get your colours sorted, and then we're good to go. So, saying good to go, I'm not a great one for planning. I can openly admit that, but you might be. And whereas I would probably start with just getting some glue on here and starting to lay bits out, you might be much more cautious than me, and that is to be recommended, to be quite honest, but you know, we're all different. So this is an A4 piece of card, so I'm just drawing the aperture there. Remind myself that that's the aperture, and you could start to plan out on here where you're going to put different pieces of the fabric, the thread, whatever. If you have a smaller piece of card, because obviously that bigger piece just fitted that, but if you've got your smaller piece of card, again, draw out your aperture, but draw around your outside edges as well. And again, you can start to plan where everything's going to go. And it is really handy, and you can also write little reminders to yourself. But I'm going to go with this. Painted it green, and I do love my garden, so I think I'm going to go with circular motifs. So I quite fancy, do you remember I said don't put the same amount of detail around the page? So I'm going to have one corner of focus here. I'm going to put a big circle there. I'm going to put smaller circles there. Now this may change, this is just an idea. And then I think I'm going to have some threads. Lovely whiplash threads, bit Art Nouveau there. So that's the start of my design. So now I know I need to find some circles of card about that size, some smaller ones, which I know I've got. And I'm thinking for this, I would use that parcel string. So that's the way I start to plan it all out. And Now, the next step for me would be to find all the pieces that I think I need to start off with, and then start getting some glue on here. And that's what I'll be doing in episode 2. So next time, for the next episode, you will need your base coat of paint on your frame, and gather together your glues, your papers, your fibres, your fabric, and anything else that really inspires you. You know, this is a starting point, really. So don't think you've got to go, oh, well, I can only use those. Have a go, experiment. That's what's fun. So you need all those. You'll need scissors. Pins are quite handy as well. If some things do resist to pin a few bits in place, that would be really useful as well. So I hope to see you in episode 2.